First of all, I'd like to thank our staff, both Mairead and Brian O'Donnell, for putting together the motion for us. I'd also like to welcome into the gallery Peter O'Donoghue from Kilworth in Cork, who has done quite a lot of work on this issue for both ourselves and for the country over the last number of weeks. We are bringing forward this motion today because we genuinely believe that the time has come to push back against the notion that cash is outdated and unnecessary. We must recognise that a cashless society could lead to exclusion and financial instability for the vulnerable groups. Moreover, it's important to acknowledge that the push towards a cashless society is driven by the interests of a few powerful corporations who stand to benefit financially from increased electronic payments. Let's not allow these special interests to dictate the future of our monetary system. Let's instead protect cash as a means of payment that provides autonomy, inclusion and security for individuals and communities. This means advocating for policies that ensure that cash remains widely accessible and accepted, and rejecting attempts by corporations to incentivise or mandate the use of electronic payment methods. Ireland cannot afford to take the role of cash in our economy for granted. We must recognise its value as a means of exchange that has served humanity for centuries by protecting cash. We can ensure that everyone, regardless of the financial status, has the ability to participate in economic activities and maintain control over their finances. It's time to take action and stand up for the importance of cash in our society by legislating to allow everyone, irrespective of status, creed or colour, to have the equal access to cash in this country, Minister. We all saw what happened in July last year when AIB tried to go cashless. The people in my constituency were up in arms over the whole thing. Myself and the people at Castletownbere, Kinsale and Dunmanway had organised a public meeting because they were going to make those banks cashless. It's an astonishing situation AIB were trying to impose on the people. But in the interim, myself, Deputy Matthew McGrath and Deputy Danny Healy-Ray left our homes in the early hours of the morning and went to the AIB headquarters here in Dublin. We demanded a meeting and answers from the CEO, and while we were having our sit-in, AIB decided to reverse their decision. This was due to the massive backlash by the Irish people and the few of us politicians who agreed with the people. While we were delighted with the outcome, we must push back against the notion that cash is outdated and unnecessary. The GAA is an integral part of Irish culture, representing not just sport, but also community and identity. The Association's move towards cashless entry is seen as a way to streamline the entry process and reduce the risk of fraud or theft. However, it has also raised concerns among many members and fans of the organisation. We know that the GAA has a broad range of members, from players to volunteers and supporters with the varying degrees of familiarity with technology. Some may struggle with the transition to a cashless system, and this could result in frustration or even exclusion from events. Financial inclusion and access to basic financial services for all members of society must be promoted. Crucially, our motion requires that government develop access to cash legislation in line with the recommendation of the Retail Banking Review Report 2022 and implement this legislation before the summer recess so that people's right to use of cash is placed on a legal footing, Minister. This proposed legislation must mandate all Ireland banks and banks that operate within the jurisdiction to provide reasonable access to cash, allowing for the further evolution of the cash infrastructure to be managed in a fair, orderly, transparent and equitable manner for all stakeholders. It must also ensure that all retail outlets and business together with consumers must have access to cash services. Our motion has been tabled here today under the limited access we have as a group to PMB motions to demand action from the government. We are here to call on this government to recognise that cash is a vital part of our society and that there will always be a demand for it. It is time for our government to implement measures to ensure that everyone, including those who cannot or will not use digital payment methods, has access to cash. Our motion demands that the government immediately publish a concrete policy that supports the development and maintenance of sustainable and resilient cash system for as long as cash is needed. We must recognise that choice is key and that everyone has the right to spend and bank on their own terms. Traditionally, when people thought of money, they thought of cash, from buying food to settling bar tabs. Day-to-day dealings dealings involved creased paper or clinking bits of metal. Over the past decade, however, payments have been taken off. Tapping a smartphone, smartphone has become normal. Now the revolution is about to turn cash into an endangered species in some rich economies. That is precisely why we have tabled this motion in an attempt to bring cash back from the brink. Unfortunately, Irish banks have been closing down branches all over the country in recent years. This trend has been allowed to occur while each Minister for Finance and Government, the main majority shareholders during these times in Allied Irish Bank and Bank of Ireland, remain completely complicit by their silence. This trend must be reversed and action must be taken to protect cash as a means to buy goods and services. In a recent email by An Post, they see themselves very much at the heart of maintaining access to cash for the communities and locally based SMEs that they serve. They are currently dealing with the government on that very issue, and part that W and the Post and Post Office network could play in the future. As you're well aware, throughout Ireland, many people and businesses rely on the ability to use deposit cash daily. Equally, faced with the cost of living crisis, many more people will choose to control their household budgets by spending only cash they have to hand. In many of the communities, An Post serve the local post office represents the last ready access point to cash, giving ongoing retreat of many banks and the reduction in ATMs. This applies to both personal customers and local SMEs. Out of 910 post offices in Ireland, 540 have no bank within 5 kilometres. 58% post offices and 375 post offices have no bank within 10 kilometres. 40% of post offices. And Minister, it has been told to us that you're going to agree with this motion today, and I just hope that this isn't going to be like many more motions you start to agree with lately and then quash it as it goes along. If you're going to agree to a motion like this, you will have to instruct businesses that are carrying out transactions cashless to immediately stop. Or there has to be a law in place, if not, that they get severe fines. Now, I spoke about Peter O'Donoghue, who's up here from Kilworth today. He exposed all this there a number of weeks ago when he went into a restaurant and they wouldn't take cash. And he did ask the gentleman who owned the business why. And more or less, from what I could gather in radio reports afterwards, the gentleman kind of put it, go somewhere else if you don't want to do your business here. That's an appalling and astonishing carry-on by any business to have that kind of a flippant attitude towards people that don't use a card, that would prefer to use cash, which they're entitled to and legally entitled to. So don't, I beg you, Minister, and I'm very, no disrespect to you again, I probably said this to you before, it's sad to think that we have two senior ministers for finance, Minister Pascal O'Donoghue and Minister Michael McGrath, and they couldn't see fit to come in here to talk about this today to the Irish people. It just shows, it just reflects very badly. You're, no disrespect to you, you're a minister in your own profile, you're a junior minister, but surely a senior minister, this is their position, is to be in here today before the Irish people to give their reasoning as to why they're going to agree to this motion. And if they're going to agree to this motion, what are they going to do? Are they going to sit in their hands and allow businesses throughout the country just go cashless at the flick of a finger? Are they going to stand up and say, no, we're tackling this issue and this is what's going to happen to businesses that don't comply within the rules? So it's up to you. You know, there's a great tradition of you know, and you know, probably any young person that growing up, they worked in place and they got a little tip or whatever. There's a bit of respect and a bit of angst is always divided amongst staff. It might not mean too much to some, but it's a lot in its own right. Imagine, what are we going for, what kind of an era are we coming? So when a child has its communion or confirmation, they'll open their card, and what's inside another card? Follow the bottom of it, instead of they having the little bit of cash that they had, so they could buy their little bit of sweets or their little computer or whatever little game they had, like we ever did when we were growing up. And them kids love to open the card, a traditional 50 quid or whatever, should God help us, it was 5 quid in our time, but I watch it's 50 or 100 now to the same value. But what I'm saying is that I cannot understand a society that wants to rule out that chance with cash. And I did listen to radio stations there when Peter O'Donoghue had brought that issue up, and it became very prevalent on the radio for a while. You know, elderly people saying they went to GA matches and couldn't go into it after they spent their whole life supporting clubs. And then they stand at the gate and they're told, sorry, it's all done by phone now, or it's done by apps, or it's done by this. They didn't understand that, and no respect was shown that. And that's right across the board in many other ways, it's just not this, Minister. So I implore you today, plead with you today, sorry, do not support this unless you want to carry out some actions on it.